It's great to welcome to the program today Bill Eddy, who is the co-founder and training director of the High Conflict Institute, also author of the book, Why We Elect Narcissists and Sociopaths and How We Can Stop. So first of all, thanks for joining me, Bill.
My pleasure, David. I'm glad to be on.
So I think that the question of why we elect them is a good one, but I think a precursor to that is why are so many more of our choices than would be likely given their prevalence in the general population, one that maybe should be addressed first. I mean, is there something to the idea that those who end up in positions of power in politics and arguably in corporations are more likely to be narcissistic and sociopathic?
Well, I think slightly greater chance in general, because these are personalities that are attracted to being in positions of power, positions where they're above other people, seen as superior to people, etc. But the more recent years, last 10, 15 years, we're getting a lot more of these folks and more extreme ones because they've realized that, especially in politics, you don't have to have any experience. As long as you're good at attracting attention, dramatic, telling people things are terrible, you've got to have me as a hero. That's seeming to be increasing, I'd say, in the last 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that to some degree, I mean, even if I think about myself, right? To even think that someone might want to watch a show that I host, there has to be some degree of what we could call anything from confidence to arrogance, all the way up to and including narcissism. And this would apply to many fields. If you think you are the right person to lead a country of 340 million people, there are certain personality traits that I imagine would have to be there, but it seems like the issue is when it crosses a certain line and starts to become problematic in the ways that you describe.
Yes, and crossing that line is the problem because you're right. Confidence is good. A teeny bit of arrogance, perhaps, but not much because then it becomes dysfunctional. And what we're looking at with narcissists and sociopaths really is dysfunctional behavior. And when they cross the line, they basically don't learn, don't change, don't have empathy, don't have remorse, don't care about other people, are so absorbed in themselves, their own power, their own image, that they actually can become quite dangerous.
Can you talk specifically about the ways that you see those characteristics as potentially becoming dangerous when they are held by or part of the makeup of world leaders like presidents of countries? In what practical ways? I mean, is it starting wars that shouldn't be started? Is it, we can think of policy, but in the bigger sense, what is the danger?
Well, the danger is that they have the ones that are problematic are what I call HCPs, high conflict personalities, with four character traits. The first one being a preoccupation with blaming others. And because of that, they target other people and they don't look at themselves. And if they're narcissists, sociopaths, and high conflict people, then they're going to target people and in many ways harm those people, and especially for sociopaths, possibly destroy, kill individuals or large groups of people. So it's that emphasis on targeting people that makes them so dangerous. And it's a psychological phenomenon because they're really diverting from themselves. They can't see anything they've ever done wrong. And with other people, they always see they're superior or want to dominate them. So the danger comes in if they have a high conflict personality as well as narcissistic and sociopathic traits.
So, Bill, I mean, you are part of the High Conflict Institute. You are a licensed clinical social worker that worked providing therapy to people of all ages. You have worked in a number of different settings where you work with and observe people that have these traits to different degrees. When you look at the current president, Donald Trump, what, if anything, matches what you would consider narcissism? What, if anything, sociopathy?
Well, first of all, I do believe he has the high conflict personality fixation on blaming other people. Narcissistic traits, and by the way, because I'm a clinical social worker licensed to diagnose mental disorders, I'm not supposed to diagnose people I haven't met. So I'm not going to say whether or not I think he has a personality disorder.
Sure.
But I can say that he has some traits. And the narcissistic traits, I think most people in the world today realize. He's preoccupied with himself. He demands admiration. He has grandiose ideas with no basis for them. He does seem to lack empathy. He gets in trouble all the time for hurting people in his policies and in his comments, and he doesn't care. And his goal is to be seen as the most superior person in the world. So he's always stepping on people to get higher and higher. And he pushes people around for that. Sociopathic traits are being highly aggressive. And that's what we see. That's part of why these folks succeed. So he has highly aggressive behavior. He's willing to take risks that everyone's shocked at, and then he gets away with it, and even he is surprised. But also deceitful, lying and conning. These are traits of sociopaths. And he seems to, someone recently reported something like 10,000 lies since he took office. Conning, even before he became president, he did an interview, I think, on the radio where he pretended he was somebody else recommending Donald Trump. So those characteristics, but also a lack of remorse and a drive to dominate other people. And that's what we see with these leaders around the world. They want to move people around. They want to, divide people, put up walls and fences and cages, and they like the power to really make people do things that they don't want to do.
When it comes to those who vote for these folks, what is it about these personality sort of packages that are appealing to at least enough voters that folks like Trump win elections in many different countries?
Yeah, and what we see all over the world really is the same pattern. Part of it is their ability to communicate 10 times more than everybody else, and at an emotional level, which really gets under the surface, under your conscious thinking.
Explain that, though. When you say they communicate 10 times more, are you saying they communicate 10 times more information?
10 times more often. So they say 10 times as many words as the next closest candidate or politician does. They are always talking. In Europe, I forget which one it was, gives 3 speeches a day. And we see in the US, especially the use of Twitter and such, is there's constant messaging coming from this type of leader. And most politicians historically are busy, behind the scenes, making things happen, working on legislation, this and that. But the leaders you see today are communicating to the public intimately in their homes, in their hands. And for the last 100 years, electronic media has made that possible. Radio first, then television, Facebook, Twitter, all of this. In the Philippines, they say that Facebook really made the election there. They call it ground zero for fake news and really manipulating people. But it's a constant barrage of messaging. You won't see other politicians doing that. So you've got the HCPs up here and everybody else talks to the public maybe once a week. They make a policy announcement or something. But this person's constantly talking in emotional terms, and they're communicating what I call the fantasy crisis triad, which is there's a terrible crisis and there's an evil villain causing the crisis, a group or a person, and I'm the hero. And so I'm going to save you from this terrible crisis and from this evil person or persons.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that almost literally during Trump's campaign when he would identify problems and actually say, only I can fix this.
Yes, exactly. And that's the classic line of HCP leaders, because they have to come in as a hero, because if they run for office based on their experience, their skills, their knowledge, they don't have experience, skills, and knowledge in government and politics. So they always come in as an outsider, claiming to be a hero. And to have that, they have to have a crisis that's usually a fantasy, or they create a crisis which could actually be real and then get into power with that. So people have to learn that pattern. That's a lot of what I'm trying to teach with my book.
So I want to be careful here in what I say, because this can get sort of dicey, but there seem to be similarities in that particular. I mean, listen, all politicians want us to believe that they know what the problems are and that they have the solutions to the problem to some degree. But you're talking about something that goes a little bit beyond that. And I have seen that in studying Mao, in studying Chavez and Maduro in Venezuela, Putin, Stalin. You have to be careful when you say it. Hitler, to some degree, there was this idea of exaggerating the degree to which the problem is narrowly sourced, and then making the case that you are the uniquely qualified person to fix that problem, which in and of itself is more or less a fantasy.
Exactly. And that pattern, people say, well, you can't compare people today to Hitler, but there's a pattern of behavior that they all share. In many ways, I see Hitler, Stalin, and Mao Zedong as the originals. They kind of established the pattern, and that people today are still using that. No, they're not the same people. Many ways, they're very different. But one thing that's similar is they're extreme. They could be on the left or on the right. And that's what we're seeing, is it's not about politics. It's about the personality and how they think they can get a route to power.
Well, that's true. But here's where I think it does become political, Bill, which is while politicians on the left and right can have these personality types, traits, and behave in this way, a lot of studies that we've seen with US voters show us that the more authoritarian approach to campaigning does appeal more to those who are on the American right. So while both left and right can try this, it seems that right-wing American voters are more likely to be drawn in by the hyper-authoritarianism.
It's to some extent true, but what's interesting to me is to see that there have been people on the left that have followed left authoritarian leaders. And I think of, one example I mentioned in the book briefly was the example of Jim Jones.
Right.
And he really wanted to have the fantasy state, the socialist, the pure socialist kingdom with him as the king. And we saw where that led, because people like this become more and more paranoid and dangerous.
What are the best ways to expose individuals with these traits and sort of refocus in reality what the actual issues are and what the real types of solutions we should be considering are?
Well, I think, first of all, I really want to see people become aware of the HCP pattern. So you see somebody that's preoccupied with blaming others, has a lot of all or nothing thinking and solutions, unmanaged emotions, extreme behaviors. People go, oh, that's an HCP. And right now, I can tell you, everybody listening to your show knows somebody like that in their personal life, in the workplace, the neighborhood, and their families too. But that pattern isn't that hard to recognize. When you see it in leaders, that's when you see that it's going to become dangerous. But I think also that voters, volunteers, candidates need to really focus on providing as much information as the HCPs provide emotion. And so when you get someone speaking 10 times as much as everybody else, you need to respond with that same amount of information. I call it the assertive approach. And it's worked in the legal setting really for the last 25 years for me and people that use this approach. So when they come out with emotions, you come out with information and match that energy, but not the destructive approach that the HCPs use emotionally.
And I think what a lot in our audience will realize, and it may even become apparent in these upcoming very, very large 20-person Democratic primary debates, is that that is not a technique that many candidates are well suited for at a sort of personality level. So I think it will be very, very interesting to watch. The book is called Why We Elect Narcissists and Sociopaths and How We Can Stop. We've been speaking with the book's author, Bill Eddy, who's also the co-founder and training director of the High Conflict Institute. Bill, such a pleasure speaking to you today.
Thank you so much, David.